I'm Teresa Coraggio, and this is Third Paradigm. Today, I'm calling my episode Calming the Fears of the Tyranny-Hesitant. Do you know that tyranny hesitancy is rampant in our society? It is a secret little habit, a dirty little habit of wanting data. And many people don't want to admit that they have a fondness for data, but there's no reason to be afraid of tyranny. Look at your neighbors, your friends, your family. They're not afraid. You too can become big and brave and just be okay with tyranny, because this is entirely a psychological malady. It has nothing to do with reality because, look, we know reality doesn't exist. Numbers lie. So let's just help to make you a little more comfortable with this old tyranny thing. What I'm going to be doing in this episode is following up on my previous episode, Domestic Truth Agents Unite, and talking about some comments that I got back from that, and also digging deeper into some of the things that I was talking about there. So one of the people who commented was the woman I mentioned before, Anna Laurie Smith, and she had posted a very heartbreaking story of why there may be so many more deaths in 2021 that were unrelated to COVID. And she told her story of having 3 surgeries that were delayed in early 2020 because of the pandemic, but then in 2021 being delayed again unless she got vaccinated because she was suffering with stage 3 kidney disease. That was something that was unthinkable. And so for her, that has put her into a really horrible position of needing to do something that would make her condition worse or just not be able to get it treated. That comment was hidden, not deleted, because I can still do a sort by newest first and it will come up. But otherwise, she thought I had deleted it and I thought maybe she had deleted it. So I don't know whether that's something that YouTube does that's just part of its algorithm, or whether that was intentional because of her content. But one of the things that we can no longer talk about is our own experience. We are no longer the authority of our own experience. And I think that's a very dangerous thing. Another of the smart, articulate women that I feel so lucky to have lured to my site is Lindsay McPherson. And she wrote about how these big percentages and numbers can be used by both sides for shock value and in order to give false impressions. And she recommended that I read something called Needle Points by Norman Doidge. And so I'm going to be looking further into that in this episode. And then on my Rumble account with that same video, I got a response from Paul Lake. And he pointed out correctly that 80,000 to 800,000 in neurological disorders that were reported in the Department of Defense health system was not a 10,000% increase, as I said, but 1,000%. And his concern is that things like that can be used to discredit you, rightly so. So I looked back at the original article I had gotten it from, and it was my mistake, not theirs. So I want to look at those big numbers and look at something that delves more deeply into that particular issue. And that is an article by Robert Malone that is a follow-up to the one that I was reporting on. So let's look at this. Let's look at the 4-point article called Needle Points by Norman Doidge. Norman is a physician and a neuroscientist, but he's become known for the psychology of vaccine hesitancy. He has coined a term called behavioral immune system. So according to him, this is part of the archaic brain, kind of like the dinosaur brain. This is a response in which someone wants to keep whatever it is that's impure from touching them. They don't want it to get into their system in the first place. And so this would be as opposed to the immune system internally of the body that then learns how to fight that, which is how a vaccine works. Now, in this, he says that people who are hesitant about vaccines are not just looking at the vaccine's efficacy or safety. 1/3 of all Americans, according to him, believe that officials are lying about vaccine safety. He also says that whether or not we agree with their behavior, we all have something to learn from those who are hesitant, because what they are is vigilant and paying attention to the people and the organizations that are part of this system. And therefore, what they're looking at isn't just the vaccine. Now, that goes back to my point, which is that if this was about the vaccine, we could settle it tomorrow. All we need to do is take our own data, agree on the methodology by which we can compare 2019, 2020, 2021, all-cause mortality, vaccinated, non-vaccinated. Period. That alone would give us enough data to be able to figure out whether there is safety and efficacy. But it would also answer another question about whether officials are lying. And so that hasn't been any of the suggestions for how we can cure vaccine hesitancy. If it was going to be something that supported the data, then why in the world wouldn't we be making that data available and encouraging everyone to apply as much scrutiny as they wanted to it so that we can settle this once and for all? Norman says that the exception to this rule of BIS is someone who is neither afraid of the vaccine nor afraid of the virus, and that person is seriously misled or delusional. Once again, I find it concerning to have a scientist who doesn't seem to believe in scientific methodology and data, that the answer that he proposes is that leaders need to double down on the trust and faith that they inspire. He's talking about a PR campaign. He's not talking about let's actually look at the numbers and let's find out the truth. And if we find out the truth about the vaccine, we'll also be finding out the truth about whether government officials are lying to us. And that's the data that we need. Now let's take a closer look at some of the data that I reported in How to Lie with Statistics and also Domestic Truth Agents Unite. This was looking at what's called DMED, the Defense Medical and Epidemiological Database. And Robert Malone has done an article on his Substack that you should look up, which is called Regarding the DMED Data Dump. So in that, he starts out by saying, this is not about vaccination versus non-vaccination. This is about money and power. And that's, I think, a question that we need to be keeping in mind. When he looks at the data, they have the raw data in an Excel spreadsheet that can be downloaded to anyone. So you can look at this data. It's been HIPAA compliant, so there's no identifying data that could lead back to an individual. It also is non-classified data. So this is something that can be worked with and that is not something that is secretive, is just trusting the conclusions. When he's done comparisons to 2020 to 2021, he has 25 to 30 different areas that he's looked at. And those are ones that are seen as related to the vaccine, suspected of being related to the vaccine. In all but spontaneous abortions, those have gone up, and they've gone up by some of the alarming rates that Lindsay would accuse of being shock value, because they are percentages that are shocking. But spontaneous abortions have gone down by 10%. So there's that. However, he says that you have to be cautious about raw data. You have to make sure you're looking at confounding factors, how the database itself has changed, whether more people have been included, which is what the Department of Defense is saying. And so you have to take all of these things into account to make sure that there are not redundancies. Is there no one who's looking at their own data in the Department of Defense? This is something that, for them to be coming back now and saying, oh, no, that's not the real data, here's the real data, is disingenuous, because there are too many things that need to be explained away. So this is something that I think we need to be doing each in our own individual county, each where we have a hospital in our area where we can get our own data and be able to figure out not just the superficial question of whether the vaccine is safe and effective, but the deep question of, are government agencies enabling corruption? And are they covering it up with this attack on information? And as one last thought, I think we should be looking at how the tyranny-hesitant have become early adopters of tyranny. What are the psychosocial factors that have made fear turn into something that is obedient, that is not just unquestioning, but that is looking at attacking others? I think it has something to do with a deep fear that there is truth to what others are saying, and that the way to keep that truth at bay is to make sure that there is no control group that can ever give the lie to the fact that maybe people have made a mistake. So let's look more closely into that. And if you're watching this on YouTube, here is digging into the data that shows some of the thought on this. And here is a playlist on censorship and media. Thank you, and I hope you subscribe.